Welcome back to Desk Careers. I'm so excited to bring another incredible guest. Today we are meeting with Jaye Richards-Hill, who is the Learning and Skills Leader for Microsoft in Middle East and Africa. Welcome to Desk Careers, Jaye. I'm so excited to have you and have this conversation with you. It's a much needed conversation.
Good to be with you today. I work for Microsoft's education team, so that's the learning and skills that I specialize in.
Fantastic. I am so excited. We often hear in the news, especially since this pandemic has started. I mean, we heard a little bit about it before the pandemic, but of course, it's even more paramount right now about the skills gap and the importance of educators to pay more attention to the skills gap. What does your team see on the Microsoft front that we need to be aware of as educators?
Well, the challenge with the skills gap is really around the talent that's available to businesses and enterprise and government that have the requisite skills that they need to cope with the pace of technological change that's taking place at the moment. I don't think we've ever been in a time in history where the pace of change is so fast. Whether you like it or not, that terminology around the fourth industrial revolution is really talking about artificial intelligence and cloud technologies. And the cloud is a capability, not a destination. And we're starting to see the cloud power diversified down to the edge. So we're not even any sort of talking about the Internet of Things anymore. It's particularly around the power of computing in sensors and devices that link back to the cloud that can make decisions. And this is the talent challenge we have. And whether it's about computing infrastructure or networks or security or IT automation, all of those different parts of what we call IT, those are the skills that are missing. And those are specific skills. But when the other thing we need to think about, I always think really closely, is that with this pace of change, you might train on technologies that by the time you get into employment, those technologies will be commonplace or obsolete even. And therefore, the skills to be able to cope with change, so agility, resilience, these are all things that are going to be so important. The ability to think creatively. And when we talk about a skills gap, it's not just about the hard skills that relate specifically to the technology. It's about the softer skills, perhaps the social and emotional skills necessary to make you an effective contributor in the workplace, to be agile, resilient, and to embrace change. A real growth mindset. This is, I think, a huge role that schools can play in helping young people to develop these skills into competencies that will serve them so well when they move into employment out of university or out of school.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate right now. I think it's important that we kind of take both perspectives. So we have almost two camps that exist in the world. We have the camp that's really pro-technology in the classroom, preparing young people for the future. And then we have kind of like, how important is technology? Does it need to be more than we're kind of facing it right now? Don't the ICT teachers do enough already? I mean, is technology something bigger than what we're already doing in terms of remote learning and using devices in the classroom? Is there more that we need to be considering as educators, and how much of an emphasis should technology be placing in the classroom?
Well, I think first off, limiting technology just to IT teachers, I think that's a busted flush now. And my view really on this is that all teachers have a responsibility to learners to help them develop digital competency. And that means we need to spread the use of IT across all subject areas, age stages, and grades, so that it becomes an underpin to great learning and teaching, and teachers using it model the behaviors that they want to see in the classroom, but also that we would want young people to exhibit when they move into higher education or into the workplace. So for me, it's very much about, IT becoming a seamless enabler of everything that we do, rather than just a defined or specific subject in the school curriculum. If it remains or stays or is just that defined subject area, then we're really not going to see young people develop the skills I talked about before, the ones about agility and creative thinking, because they will pigeonhole IT into a specific subject area and not as something that they will be using probably for most of their working day when they move into work.
Okay, let's narrow in on a statistic. Apparently, according to the statistic, the evolution of the demand for skills by 2030 is predicted to be a 60% increase in technological skills. How is Microsoft helping schools to reach that target?
Well, we're doing a lot. I mean, we do a lot of work around teacher professional development, and we believe that teachers are key to helping to drive this skills revolution and close the talent gap that we're seeing all over the world. And so that teacher professional development is oriented very much towards not just basic button training on the new technologies, but how it lands in classrooms, so scenario-based training. And we partner with many organizations around the world to build these teacher professional development online programs. And they focus on how you would use this technology to drive great learning and teaching. And that really helps young people to see that technology is that embedded part of everyday life. You know, I sometimes think our young people, they're at home before they come to school, they're maybe multitasking on a cell phone, a PVR, they're doing something on a computer, they might even have a VR headset, and yet they come into school and we give them a pen and a piece of paper and they have to power down and effectively do 6 hours of low-grade clerical work. And there is a disconnect in my mind between what we see in school in a lot of cases and what the real world is like outside of school or university in the real world. And we have to make tech more ubiquitous if we want our young people to be able to cope with the changes that we're seeing and the technology that's going to become increasingly part of the workplace. You know, it's a scary thought. They reckon that there's so many jobs will be replaced by robots, the repetitive and low cognitive level tasks. Lots of jobs are going to go, without a doubt, but lots of jobs are going to be created. And at the moment, as you can see from the statistics, the talent gap is pretty big. And that's because perhaps young people are coming out with the wrong skills rather than no skills. And we really need to take a reality check and figure out how we can make education better fit for purpose to serve the needs of the wider society that our young people will need to succeed within.
What does Microsoft look for in young talent? Let's say I was a fresh graduate and thinking about reaching out to Microsoft. What would some of those skills and talent requirements be?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, you know, what we see is that 41% of employers say that graduates are just not prepared when they come into the workplace. And what's important to us and to companies like Microsoft is evidence of technical skills. So while you've been at university doing your degree, what have you done? What else have you done to help build your portfolio, your professional portfolio? Have you looked at certifications from companies like Microsoft? Have you built a network that helps you to communicate every day with thought leaders in the area that you're looking to go into? Have you made an effort to acquire certifications in these new technologies, in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all of these new areas that we hear so much about? This is what we look for, and we look for someone who is not wanting to know everything, but somebody who wants to learn everything. And that's the culture and the ethos we have. We look for that growth mindset, evidence that somebody is really hungry for success. And in that respect, you know, postgraduate degrees probably don't carry as much weight nowadays as perhaps these certifications and evidence of the use of these technologies in some way, or at least we need to see an ability or a real thirst for learning.
Wonderful. Okay, let's go back to the core soft skills. Take us back. If you could rank them, you know, in your top 3, what would they be for a young person?
So if I was to rank them personally, I think the first one would be communication skills. You need to be able to work with a large number of people, many of whom will be very different to you, very diverse. Now we see, you know, teams that are spread out all over the place. Microsoft technologies are not created by one guy in a room on a computer. They are built by global networks. Feedback comes from colleagues all over the world during this development. And the ability to communicate on a level that's positive and supportive, I think, is critical. Knowing that, much of what we do is online. Sometimes online communication is very different than face-to-face communication. You miss many of the nuances that you see in body language and nonverbal communication. So it's really important that heightened communication skills are keenly developed and encouraged. I think the second one for me would be agility. And when I talk about agility, I mean things like creative thinking, the ability to think computationally, to transfer theoretical learning from one thing over to something that might be completely unrelated. So that way of thinking that allows you to cope with change really well. And for me, the third one would be resilience. We need to be real about the fact that sometimes people don't get it right. Sometimes you fail, you get it wrong. And failing, is perhaps a stage in a learning journey towards success. But what we find sometimes is that young people are afraid to fail. There's a fear of failure, and that makes them less effective because they don't take perhaps calculated risks in a way that they maybe should. And so that resilience to picking yourself up and getting back on the horse and getting on with it is critical in an age where we probably don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now.
Okay, so you mentioned communication, resilience, and creative thinking. In my mind, as an educator, I'm thinking, do I need technology for that? Or are we looking at using those three core soft skills, but translating them into a digital platform?
Yeah, so I think those three core soft skills enable people to be able to take full advantage of the technology that's available to them at any particular time. And increasingly, that pace of change is rapid. So you might need to transfer the way you work from one piece of tech to another. I was struggling a little bit to get to grips with Zoom at the start of this call because I'm used to using Microsoft Teams. It's that kind of agility, to be able to flip between back and forth and to help build those communication channels. So, technology is a huge part of what we do in everyday life, work, play, school, everywhere. And we can't discount that. Do you need technology to teach those skills? Maybe not. Speaking as a teacher that used to teach before technology was ubiquitous in our classrooms, we would find ways to support learners to develop those competencies, because it's about acquiring a skill, but then giving a learner the chance to practice until that skill becomes a competency. But there's no getting away from the fact that those are the skills they will need to be able to cope with technological change at a rapid pace.
Let's talk a little bit about the digital fluency and the STEM skills that were identified. What would those be? So if I'm a parent watching this thinking, okay, what are the digital fluency skills that I need to prepare my child for? We have to be honest. We're preparing children for careers, as you said, that don't even exist. If I have a young 12-year-old right now, there's no way I can honestly say that I'm preparing that young person for a future career. But by helping them with these soft skills, I'm helping them develop and evolve. But if I was a parent thinking, what are the digital skills that they need to be fluent in? What would you say are the most competitive?
Well, I think, first of all, you've got to look at the trends. So if I was a parent advising my children all grown up, so I end up advising my grandchildren. I talk to them about what they see happening in the world. And then I would look on places like LinkedIn and other platforms to see what the trends are. And really those trends are going to govern what we need to help encourage in our young people, for sure. STEM, I think, is an overused acronym. And we see people adding the arts into it, so STEAM, and then there's also, I've lost the count, I think, of the changes that have come to STEM. But the basic concept of that is that science, technology, engineering, maths is important because it really does help you develop the skills, the soft skills that I talked about, particularly around agility and creative thinking and communication. But But we shouldn't get too fixated on those as the most important parts of the curriculum, because you can just as much develop those skills of creativity and communication with an arts-based curriculum. But if you're looking towards the world of work, then you do have to, be pragmatic about where these new careers are going to come from. And we know that, software development, cloud, data roles, artificial intelligence, and data science, analytics, and security are going to be big growth areas. And therefore, careers advisors would perhaps look at these careers, look at the criteria for entrance. What are universities looking for entrance to degree courses? What certifications and online courses, short learning programs can you look at to help you build your competencies in these areas? And these are the things that are driving the growth in jobs. And these are the things that are driving the growth in wages and salaries. So there's a big difference between the old jobs like administrative jobs and hands-on engineering and driving buses or trains or cars. When you set those against computing, the new kinds of careers, the amount of technology in healthcare now and sales and management, with CRM systems and cloud-based sales tools, that's going to be the source of new income. And I would certainly be encouraging my young children or grandchildren or learners, if I was still teaching, that they should think really hard about the career that they aspire to. You need to love what you're going to do, and you need to have a passion for it, but you also need to be real about intrinsic and extrinsic rewards and what's important to you and what the demand for jobs will be. And unfortunately, we are seeing rising graduate unemployment in many places around the world because young people are going into degrees and they're coming out and they're finding that those degrees are not valuable in the workplace, which values other degrees more. And that's unfortunate. But it seems to be the way the world is going. The country I live in, South Africa, has a huge challenge with that. There are more social science graduates coming out than there are careers, perhaps, but just not enough computing science and technology graduates. So hard decisions, really.
Hard decisions and lots of in-depth research and discovery required, I think, from as young as students in early secondary education, I think really should be looking into this. If you could leave our listeners with one top tip, knowing that Microsoft have identified education is important, what would you want them to know?
I would probably want them to know that millions of workers in the biggest economies in the world over the next 3 years are going to need to reskill. Some estimates as much as 120 million workers in the 12 largest economies. And this is primarily as a result of AI-enabled automation. So we're seeing automation coming in and changing the face of the job market. So I would encourage young people thinking about careers and what they need to do to build a career successfully, to do their homework, to speak to people in the careers they aspire to try and look and see what jobs are available and what qualifications you need to get those jobs. LinkedIn is a great platform for over 16s. You can start to build your network up and look at what successful people in the career you choose, what background they've got, and what certifications and qualifications they have. And this upskilling of the workforce is actually creating huge opportunities because some people will choose not to be upskilled and will retire or change career. And that's opening up opportunities for young people with the right qualifications or the right attitude of that growth mindset. So firstly, do your research. But secondly, think about how you face your life every day and the challenges that you come up against. And think about, are you in a fixed mindset about what you believe you can achieve? Or do you have this growth mindset, which enables you to look at every problem as a challenge that can be overcome?
Thank you, Jaye. You've left us with a lot of food for thought, lots to be thinking, whatever hat I'm wearing, whether I am a parent, a teacher, or even a student. Lots to be thinking about and lots to be really discovering. I think it's an exciting place for young people to start planning ahead, the opportunities at their fingertips, organizations like Microsoft paying attention and reaching out to support schools is also a big bonus for young people. So If you're out there watching, I hope that today's conversation left you with some food for thought, maybe a rethink about the career you're looking for, a conversation at home with your parents, or maybe a class conversation with your class teacher. Thank you, Jaye, for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. We were speaking with Jaye Richards-Hill, who is the Learning and Skills Leader for Microsoft, Middle East, and Africa. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time at Desk Careers Digital Spotlight.